right, let's talk about some of the worst biased coverage I've ever seen in my life. Coming up next. What's going on, everybody? All right, video number 2. Now let's break down the NBC coverage. Like I said, this is some of the most biased coverage I think I've ever seen in my entire life. So let's start off with the obvious that a lot of people on Twitter were complaining about, at least the Chase Elliott coverage. Now, I'm a Chase Elliott supporter. Not going to sit here and deny it. But the coverage was definitely biased toward him, and even to me, it sort of started to get a little ridiculous. So let's start off with the pool room. The pool room, maybe 2 or 3 segments would have been fine, and of course you have to have the segment at the end where they ring the siren, or the siren, however you want to say it. Of course it's the siren down there, but it just got so over the top. Like it felt like every commercial break we were coming back to, instead of coming back to the race, we were coming back to the Dawsonville pool room, and it just sort of got I don't know, it just wasn't good, and it was 100% biased. And of course, the other bias in there was they talked about how other drivers were driving dirty, but then when Chase throws a late block, it's just sort of, they glossed over it. They didn't give the other perspective of people who thought it was a dirty move. They only gave the perspective, which is a perspective I actually agree with. If you saw my previous video, I talked about that. They didn't give the perspective of the people who were upset about it and thought it was a dirty block. They just said, oh, that's how racing is today. But they didn't treat other drivers in the same exact fashion. So obviously, let's get into those drivers. But they definitely went over the top with the Chase Elliott bias. But let's talk about those other drivers. NBC acted like Ross Chastain stopped his car on the racetrack, got out of it, and started clubbing baby seals. They acted like he was the most villainous character since Heath Ledger in The Joker. I have never seen anybody melt down over a car basically pushing up the racetrack and getting into Denny Hamlin. Especially frustrating about this is nobody mentioned the fact that, oh, he might have pushed up and got into him, right? It was just like they made it out to be like this super intentional thing. Like Ross Chastain drove up the racetrack with the full intention of just wrecking Denny Hamlin for no other reason than he wanted, you know, whatever spot they were racing for at the time, 3rd, 4th, whatever it was. They just acted like it was just the dirtiest move in the history of NASCAR racing. And honestly, to me, yeah, Ross went up there and he was trying to get to his corner to slow him down so that he could get back to him. He got there, and then he pushed up a little bit when he got to him, and he made contact with him. I personally didn't think this was a big idea, and earlier in the race, NBC didn't think it was a big idea either, because literally the exact same move was done in stage 1 by Denny Hamlin to Ross Chastain. And instead of Jeff Burton sitting there acting like Ross Chastain had just committed the worst crime in the history of the world, you know what they said when Denny Hamlin did the exact same thing in stage 1 to Ross Chastain? Of course, Ross Chastain caught his car. He didn't wreck like Denny Hamlin. You know what they said? Oh, Denny Hamlin ain't going to cut him no slack the rest of the season. They've got history. So, literally the exact same move and 2 totally different points of view. Like, I don't mind them having a point of view and giving their point of view, but at least they need to give the other perspective on it. I think the saving grace in all of this NBC coverage was the post-race when Kyle Petty, thank God for Kyle Petty said, out of all these analysts, Kyle Petty was the only one who stood up and said, I like the way Ross Chastain drives. You can't teach that. The guy is a winner. So thank God for Kyle Petty, because he stepped in with the voice of reason. And they just act. It was the biggest nothing burger, okay? It's a plate track. The guy pushed up. It happens all the time. This type of stuff happens all the time at plate tracks. But because it was Ross Chastain, they want to move on this villain arc, and it was absolutely ridiculous. It was a nothing burger, and the only reason it was something is because it was Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin getting together again. And let's talk about the post-race coverage where they started talking to Denny Hamlin and Corey LaJoie, because once again they were biased and they were trying to create news instead of report news. All right, let's cut to the post-race coverage where they chased Corey LaJoie around for 20 minutes by their own admission. NBC admitted it to their own admission. They said, we chased him around for 20 minutes, and we couldn't get him to say anything negative about Chase Elliott, because at the end of the day, it was a racing move. I feel that strongly. I think Corey LaJoie feels that strongly, and I know Chase Elliott feels that strongly. I don't think anybody would have done anything different there if you're either driver. But they also chased down Denny Hamlin and were just continually trying to get him to say he was going to retaliate and do something to Ross Chastain in the playoffs. They basically peer pressured him. And this was probably the worst part of the entire coverage because as a reporter, as a professional news reporter, you see legacy media. They always talk down about TMZ. They always talk down about us YouTubers. They always talk down about this new media. Like, we're just gossipy and all this other stuff. But they were trying to interject themselves into this story. They were trying to pressure Denny Hamlin into saying, yeah, I'm going to wreck Ross Chastain at the first playoff race, first playoff opportunity I get. They were trying to create their own drama instead of, as an actual news organization or TV coverage of a sport, just report the story. They were trying to interject their own story into this, and I think that right there is where I have a serious problem. You just are supposed to report the story. That is what journalism is. You do not create the news. And so that was my biggest issue with this whole deal. I thought NBC really fumbled it right there. Now, NBC's done great things. Like, their coverage is usually pretty good. But this is probably some of the worst coverage I've ever seen from NBC in my entire life. Instead of just reporting the story, they were trying to inject themselves into the story. They were trying to give Ross this villain arc. They were just trying to create drama instead of just reporting what happened. And I had a serious problem with that. I just don't like it. And hopefully going forward, they will fix it and it will get better. All right, that's all I got for you on this one. If you made it this far, feel free to subscribe. It helps out the channel, and I really appreciate it. If you got a comment, leave it down in the comment section. You might disagree with me. That's fine. That's cool. I love to see the other points of view because sometimes you guys do change my mind. Sometimes I miss things. So leave something down in the comments and let me know. And other than that, thanks for your time. Peace. All right, I got 2 more videos coming out after this. Obviously, I didn't cover the Ross Chastain deal, and I didn't cover the NBC coverage. So there will be 2 more videos coming out after this. All right, I'm really going now.